Hi everyone, thank you for stopping by. It's Clair's new release, Springish Fiesta collection. I'm excited to share this gorgeous daffodil from the You Are Loved digital stamp set. Links for this image and the full collection can be found in the description of this YouTube video or on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. I began by creating a background by copying and pasting a small image of the daffodil and one of the sentiments, "Our friendship is timeless." The background was printed twice, once on Bristol Smooth cardstock and also on masking paper. And yep, I fussy cut all those daffodils. I found that once I got into the rhythm, it went a lot more quickly than I anticipated that it would. I made sure that as I was trimming, that I was cutting either on the line or right inside of it. And going inside the line actually makes it a lot quicker. By trimming them down just shy of the outline of the image, this will ensure that when the masks go down and the ink blending begins, that there will not be that white halo around the image. When all was said and done, I did have a little bit of haloing here and there, but those little bits were easily fixed up by matching a Copic marker to the background. I used the second largest die in Pink Fresh Studio slim rectangles to cut my panel. I then put all the masks on the daffodils. You may notice that there's some printing on the back of my mask. The masks that I'm using does not have a design on the backing paper, and so I ended up having to print it twice. And I do this often, and every time that I do, I tell myself that I'm going to mark the front of it before I put it through the printer, and each time I forget. I'm going to be working with Distress Oxide inks to create my ink blended background. I selected colors that just said spring to me: Mowed Lawn, Twisted Citron, and Squeezed Lemonade. I began by just randomly applying all of the colors. When the panel was completely inked, I went back and reapplied each color, extending it slightly into the next one until I had a nice smooth blend. All of the masks were removed. It was helpful to use a craft pick for some of those slender pieces. The large daffodil image was printed on Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound cardstock and fussy cut. Of course, after I had done all of my coloring, I decided that I wanted to have a bit more dimension, and I printed the image again, and this time just fussy cut the flower heads. However, the coloring was straightforward and simple. All of the leaves were colored at once, first on the large image and then on to the background. On the large image, I used 3 greens: YG 67, 63, and 03. Starting at the base of the leaf with the darkest tone YG 67, I worked towards the tip of the leaf with the lighter ones. The color is applied in flicking motions. The ink is applied 2 times for each leaf. For the smaller daffodil images on the background, I just use YG 67 and 63. This super fast coloring certainly balanced out the time it took to fussy cut all those masks. For the daffodils on my background, I use my lightest tone and darkest tone, Y00 and 18. Like the leaves, the flower heads are so small it was easy to get away with just 2 tones. But unlike the leaves, I sidestepped the mid-tones so that the flowers would have some highlighting and stand out a bit more. Because I decided to add another layer with the flower heads, I had lots of practice coloring the large daffodils. So in addition to the 2 colors that I used on the small daffodils, I'm also working with the mid-tone Y13. The dark tone Y18 is used at the base of each flower petal. I also use it if there are any creases on the flower's edge. I find that it can be challenging getting shadows and highlights in the yellow tones. For that reason, I only apply the mid and light tone once. The deep tone, Y18, is applied twice to really deepen that shadow area. Like the leaves, the ink is applied in a flicking motion. That helps to lessen the saturation on the outside edges, and when the next color is introduced, it blends easily. I'm using some puffy letter stickers to create a main sentiment to accompany the secondary sentiment that is in the background. I put some post-it note on my ruler to get a nice straight edge for me to line up the stickers to make sure that the sentiment goes on straight. I use the grid on my work surface to align both the panel and the ruler. I've used this method successfully so many times, but it wasn't 100% for me this time. However, enough of the letters were in place that I was easily able to align the other two. Foam squares were used on the back of the main daffodil. For the slender leaves, the squares were either cut in half or into threes. After all of the backing was removed off those foam squares, the daffodil was centered at the bottom of the panel. To make the flower heads really stand out, they were also given some additional dimension. Just as a reminder, the second largest die in Pink Fresh Studio slim stitched rectangles was used to cut the main panel. The largest die from this set with its pretty stitch detail was used to cut white cardstock. This panel was mounted on a card base of Neenah Classic Crest 110 pound cardstock that measured 3 3/4 inches by 8 3/4 inches. This card was embellished with lots of clear confetti topped with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. Speaking of the name, that's exactly what they look like to me. Beautiful shining dewdrops. And that wraps up this slimline card featuring Joy Clair Designs, You Are Loved. To check out the full release and get lots of inspiration, be sure to hop along in the SPRINGish Fiesta blog hop. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, I appreciate your visit.